Star Wars is the greatest franchise of all time, and it's largely due to the Legends continuity. I mean, when Disney announced in 2012 that they were purchasing Lucasfilm, a lot of fans, like myself included, were excited to see what Disney could do with this new future for Star Wars. I mean, that first teaser trailer for The Force Awakens was truly magical. No matter how you feel about the sequel trilogy now, you have to admit that was just some of the best moments of ever being a Star Wars fan. But I say all of that just to say, this new era definitely came at a cost. All of the games, books, novels, you name it, that were out there during that time period, they were suddenly labeled non-canon and rebranded under a new name, Star Wars Legends. I mean, this is the Star Wars a lot of fans grew up with outside of the films. We got to see Luke Skywalker create his new Jedi Order. We got to see Han and Leia continue their relationship and eventually have children, and how everything with that turned out. Not to mention all the new heroes and villains that were introduced during this time period. So when Legends became the new title for everything, a lot of people just felt like, man, is really everything I knew about Star Wars just suddenly non-canon or non-special at all? Well, I'm here to tell you that's not the case, because here's the truth. Star Wars Legends still matters, not just as nostalgic fan fiction or obscure lore for Disney to use when convenient, but as an essential piece of Star Wars storytelling that shaped the entire franchise into what it is today. While George Lucas started to move away from the spotlight, the galaxy kept expanding. Novels like Heir to the Empire and Dark Force Rising kind of reignited the feel of Star Wars during the 90s and gave a lot of people that sense of longing that they've been desperately looking for since The Last Jedi and before the prequels. We had characters like Darth Revan, Thrawn, Mara Jade, Darth Hydas, you name it, all great heroes and villains that were introduced during this time period, which nowadays are slowly trickling their way into the canon for Disney, which goes to show how much these stories were important to people and how good they just really were. Because even now, the influence of Legends is undeniable. Thrawn was reintroduced into canon in Star Wars Rebels, and now plays a major role in the Mandoverse. Elements from the Old Republic, Bane's Sith philosophy, and even entire story arcs are being quietly adapted, reshaped, and reimagined into the current canon. It's as if Legends serves as a vast mythological archive that creators continue to mine for inspiration. But beyond influence, Legends gave us freedom. It told bold, sometimes risky stories, and I'm not going to act like it was all good, because there was definitely some terrible choices and stories, but Luke confronting the dark side within himself, Leia becoming a full Jedi Knight, and seeing a galaxy ruled by the Yuzang Vong, where the Force itself was at challenge, the rise and fall of Darth Krayt. I mean, these stories weren't perfect, but they were ambitious and deeply creative, and they pushed the boundaries in ways Star Wars needs more of today. And before we continue, let's talk about the whole idea of headcanon. Personally, I think the idea of headcanon is actually 100% fine. It's totally okay to have your own enjoyment or your own beliefs for a franchise you love, because at the end of the day, this is all entertainment. However, I also think it's important to have your own headcanon while still recognizing that there's an overall consensus canon for these stories. So if you can make certain aspects of Legends fit into the current canon, then I think you should, because until they say otherwise, why not? And if you dislike the sequels and want to completely ignore those, then you should focus on what you do like, but also I challenge you to try to find aspects of the sequels that you do enjoy and find a way to incorporate that into your fandom, or at the very least acknowledge that they exist and that you have your own preference. I know a lot of people want to jump the gun and say Disney ruined Star Wars, Disney Star Wars isn't real, or call it fan fiction slop, but to be fair, that isn't right. Because even with all the problems the sequels have, they do exist. They do have fans, and there are a lot of people who put years of their lives and dedication into those films. And let's face it, without those films, Star Wars probably wouldn't even be a topic of discussion right now. Just the best things those films did were introduce Star Wars to a whole new younger audience. But that's all besides the point. Now here's where I stand. I'm a fan of Star Wars, so that includes the original trilogy, the prequels, and even the sequels. I don't love everything about all of those, but there are certain aspects that I enjoy. And since the main problem people have with Star Wars is the sequels, I will acknowledge the fact that I love the first two films, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker, I get some fun out of it, but not really something I enjoy at all. And I'm willing to acknowledge that. But it's not a film that I'm going to bash or hate. And that's just the way I am. You don't have to be that way. But I challenge you to kind of look at it from that perspective to say, you know what? Yeah, I don't like those films, but there is good within the bad, because there are legit moments within the sequels that actually bring kind of tears to my eyes, or just give me the feeling of Star Wars that I felt as a kid, to the point that even the score, like, let's talk about that. The sequel trilogy has an amazing score, Of course, the original trilogy and prequels have pretty much scores that are undeniable and just impossible to beat. But at the same time, John Williams brings his A game to the sequels as well. He doesn't miss a beat, and I don't think anyone has a problem with any of the sequel scores. So, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm easy to please or because I love Star Wars so much, but I'm able to look at the things I don't like and just ignore them, and then look at the things I do like and just appreciate it more and more as I view them. So I don't know. Maybe I'm weird like that. Call me a shill or whatever in the comments. Either way, I just love Star Wars, so I'm going to talk about the things I appreciate. But even with all that love, at the same time, I recognize that something was lost in Star Wars when Legends became a thing. But here's the beauty. We don't need to choose one over the other because we have both. We have the opportunity to love Legends and the current canon. The canon timeline and Legends timeline aren't rivals. They aren't competing with one another. If anything, Disney is still reprinting the Legends stories and giving them out to a new audience to make sure that they're engaged and know those stories exist. So in my head, I view them as two different timelines, two different outcomes for the galaxy, and they both deserve respect. In fact, having both continuities is a strength and not a weakness. Think of it like Marvel's multiverse or DC's Elseworlds. Legends gives us a playground to explore what if, while canon lays the foundation for what's next. It's not about canon or not, it's about whether a story resonates. And Legends resonates deeply with fans who found hope, meaning, and escape in those tales when nothing else Star Wars is coming out. But let's also talk about characters, because Legends is where so many unforgettable heroes and villains were born. Like I mentioned, Mara Jade, the Emperor's Hand, who would later become Luke Skywalker's wife, was a fan favorite for a reason. She was complex, conflicted, and powerful. Her story added depth to Luke's arc, showing us that even Jedi Masters can struggle with trust, love, and redemption. And then there's Revan, from Jedi hero to Sith Lord to redeemed warrior. Revan's journey in Knights of the Old Republic is considered one of the greatest character arcs in Star Wars, matter of fact, just fiction history. His influence stretched across millennia of galactic history. Revan wasn't just a game changer, he was a symbol of moral ambiguity and how identity can shape destiny. We also got deeply personal stories in Legends. The Legend of the Force series took us down the heartbreaking path of Jacen Solo, Han, and Leia's son as he falls to the dark side and becomes Darth Kaitis. Watching Jacen try to save the galaxy only to become the thing he feared the most was tragic and one of the most gripping stories in all Star Wars. His fall predates Kylo Ren's story, but also gives us a similar tragedy. Yet both stories can and should exist side by side. There's no point in just putting one over the other. We can have the story of Jacen Solo as well as Ben Solo and learn that yeah, they're different, but they both exist. And that's what Legends really gave us. Years of emotional growth and maturity as we got to see the characters we know and love grow over a lifetime, making impossible choices and still coming out, keeping their morality and just being themselves. And I understand that's why a lot of people have problems with the sequels. So the Legends continuity is a great way for people to still get those characters they love in the way that they know them. Let's not forget the sheer scale of the galaxy that Legends built. Entire eras were fleshed out, like the Old Republic and the New Jedi Order. There were wars, romances, betrayals, you name it, and even spiritual revelations. There was horror, mystery, and politica drama, people. Legends was a complete universe, and for many of us, it was the Star Wars we grew up with. Today, with Disney's canon expanding, there's room for both. In fact, Lucasfilm has shown they know Legends still holds value. The return of Darth Bane, mentions of Revan, references to Malachor and Mandalorian lore, I mean, it's all there. The recent Tales of the Jedi and the Acolyte and Ahsoka prove the well of inspiration hasn't dried up. They're still drinking from the river that Legends carved throughout the desert years ago. So if you're someone who only has watched the Star Wars movies or TV shows, I highly encourage you to check Legends out. There are some great stories that you could be missing out on. And on the flip side, if you're someone who doesn't get a lot of enjoyment out of the current state of Star Wars, I completely understand, but I also encourage you to just continue to look out for it and find things that interest you and just look at the good within all of it. There's going to be some bad, trust me, there's definitely some bad in the current state of Star Wars, but there's a lot of good as well. You definitely be missing out on it if you just cut it all off completely. Because at the end of the day, Star Wars is all about storytelling. Whether that's canon or not, these stories are meant to inspire, so if they do something for you, then that's the entire purpose of them in the first place. Because Legends was always our myth, our saga, and our history, and if you ask me, I think it still is. So again, it's Keith here, and I'll leave one final challenge before you go. Just go ahead and comment down below, what's your favorite Star Wars Legends story? Matter of fact, what's your favorite story in Legends and the current canon? I'm trying to see what you guys enjoy about Star Wars out here. So go ahead and comment down below for me. Until next time, may the Force be with you.